Hi, this is Representative Al Baldessaro, and this is Who's Looking Out for You with my co-host, Representative Janine Notta.
Hi, Al.
It's always a pleasure from the great town of Merrimack.
Right, and you know, this is our last show before the election.
You ain't kidding.
Then
Wow,
we take a break, and then we can come back and we can talk about things other than politics.
Yeah, we want to talk about opiates, and I actually talked to a police officer about coming on here in Londonderry that deals with these
And
cases.
you know
and
we
all
got
that.
to do a show on fitness. You
Oh,
know it.
oh, but,
all
we
this
have to.
time following me, training
ain't
for a
kidding.
marathon. That's
Everyone in Londonderry and all around the state knows how many miles you ran.
what
did
was
we
it?
talk about the last time? How many miles you ran?
1,462. I'm still there, even though this is the third, because it's the third show today.
When's the marathon?
Well, gosh, they changed the date on me, and I've got my cousin's wedding 2 days, and then 2 days later is the date of the marathon that I thought it was still a week later, and then my son is getting married, then we have the election. I'm like, okay, it's not going to happen. They're giving me a refund. I'm going to still run 26.2
All right, tell
again
you
because
what.
I have to get it in under 5 hours.
Tell
I
you
have
what
to.
we'll do. November 10th is the Marine Corps marathon.
Birthday.
Our next,
I wanna do that
our
one.
next
I wanna
guest.
do that one.
Okay, when he wins
Navy.
when he wins the congressional seat here in
Please,
CD1,
God, let him win,
which he's going to
please.
win. There's no doubt in my mind. Then
Republicans get
if
out
he
and
has
vote.
campaign money left over, maybe he can fund you to run the Marine Corps marathon.
The sailor?
Yeah, the sailor.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, let me introduce it. I want to introduce my good friend Eddie Edwards, who
Hi,
I've
Eddie.
known
Hi.
now, Eddie, what, 12, 13 years?
It's been sometimes, yeah.
Sometime there.
Yeah.
For those that don't know Eddie, Eddie was on the liquor commission as long as I've been up there.
Yeah.
As the chief of security there. And then when he left, he actually had some issues there because he's brought out like a whistleblower pretty much, stuff that was going on and everything else, and they were attacking him because your integrity.
Yeah.
And Eddie, welcome to Londonderry once again.
Thank you for having me.
So you were one of the early guests when we brought our show back.
I was. And
That's
so it's
right.
great to be back again.
How's
Thank you.
it feel to be win the district in the primary?
It felt good to really have that type of support throughout the
I
district.
voted for you.
Was that?
I voted for you.
Thank you so much. Yeah,
I
it
voted
felt,
for you too.
Yes, yes.
And you
it
know, it's a
felt great.
shame it was a dirty election. I want to get out right off the bat there because at the polls, if I wasn't asked 50 times, I was asked 100 times, why is Eddie against immigration? And I kept telling them that was fake news
Yeah.
that was put out on you during the election.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
The primary. You want to explain where
Well,
you stand?
you mean sanctuary cities?
Sanctuary
Yeah,
cities.
yeah. I am not supportive of sanctuary cities. I am a very proud sailor, very proud patriot.
When I say sailor, I mess with him because
Yeah.
I'm a retired Marine. He served
Navy.
8 years, I think, in the Navy.
Yeah,
And I
totally,
don't hold
yeah.
it against him.
So I've never supported sanctuary cities.
I know you
ever.
never did. That's
Yeah.
why it was all fake.
And that's part of the process in campaigning. I wish it were different. I'm sure you guys wish it were different. But you know, that's behind us now, and we got to be focused on the general election because we have a primary opponent that is favorable to some of those.
Primary.
Right.
You mean general election.
A general election opponent that is favorable
Right.
to some of those things.
Well-
and I think that's
big
that's.
taxes and big government. He's a big mistake for New Hampshire.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Eddie Edwards is the man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then,
Everything's
and then
free on that
CD2,
side.
Steve Negron.
Right, everything's free. You know, when he talks about providing free community college or free state college, somebody has to pay for that. It's
That's
not
right.
free.
Yep.
Nothing's free.
Nothing is
he
free.
when
It's
he
a-
talks about threatening seniors with Medicare, putting a lot of people onto Medicare who haven't paid into the system.
So all these things he's promoting, it's socialism. And when you've got a socialist, communist society, everyone is brought down to the lowest common denominator. You want everyone to have the same? They're all going to be equally poor, but they'll still be the elite.
Well,
Those in charge are still going to have it all, and you'll have nothing.
Well, you know, this is somebody who's been on the ballot 18 times. He started running for office when he was
Right.
22
Oh,
years
yeah.
old, so he's been on the ballot.
You don't have to
How
work.
old is he now? He looks like he's not even 22.
I think he's 38.
He does.
so-
Chris Pappas don't have to work because it's his mother's restaurant.
Right.
I love the commercial on how he's trained. How do you train people to clean tables or sweep floors? Or
Yeah.
we used to have a family restaurant. He trained people.
Yeah,
Give it a
well,
break
well,
with that.
well,
You know what I mean? That's what I say. My opinion.
Part of that is that I think he's trying to show that he's he's kind of working. Listen, I don't begrudge what his great-grandfather's grandfather's father's
Oh, I
done.
don't either.
But I think that's a difference. If you want to implement some of the things you're asking other business owners to do, you should do them at your place.
That's right.
And it shouldn't be forced by the government. And this is what he doesn't understand. Like, when he suggests that we should have a $12 minimum wage, and he actually said that the economy is going well now. This is the time to implement a minimum wage, which is absurd because he said you have to create a foundation because the economy won't always be good. And he believes that's a downturn in the economy, that folks who have $12 an hour or $15 an hour wage jobs are going to maintain those jobs. I mean, this is the silliness of this type of approach when you think government can come in and mandate. But I asked the question before, how many people at his place actually start at $12 an hour,
That's right.
$15 an hour? If you believe in these
I got
programs,
like $4.50
if you believe in free college, how many of your employees do
But
you pay
if
for
you're a
college for?
waitress, that's
No.
$3 something an hour because you're getting tips.
No,
Is he
You
paying
know?
for the college for all his employees? No?
I don't believe he is.
Is he paying for their insurance for all his employees?
Well, he claims that he's provided insurance for all of his employees before the mandates. And that's a decision you make as a business owner to attract talent. It shouldn't be the government's responsibility to come in and stamp in and mandate that on your businesses and our families.
Well, what we'll probably do is get, Chris Pappas is the wrong person for the state of New Hampshire. I've known him too for a while. And he's the wrong one. He's a tax and spender. He's against the Second Amendment. Londonderry has one of the biggest, fish and game, hunting, shooting ranges here in the state.
sure.
And I know you've been there many times. I've seen
Yeah.
you shooting. Not bad for a Navy guy.
That's right.
Not
That's
bad
right.
for a Navy guy.
Well, the only, I tell people the only medal I ever received in the military was for expert pistol shot.
Was it?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
did you hear that, Marine?
Yeah, I heard
Yeah.
that there.
And part of that is that again, Chris believes that the Second Amendment has to do with hunting and fishing.
Right, he has
The
no
Second
clue.
Amendment has nothing to do with hunting and fishing. It says the government shall not infringe. This is a right that you're giving from birth. And the fact of the matter is that we should restrain the federal government. We have reasonable gun laws in our state. We have a culture here that speaks to human decency and respect. And so some of the horrible things that have happened around the country, in Florida, Texas, and California, have not happened here because of the way that we empower our families here and our citizens here. But the notion of the federal government coming in and passing federal laws that mandate to the state of New Hampshire what to do, I don't believe in that at all. I think the Second Amendment is just as much about the 10th Amendment as anything else. And I think we have to make sure that we're aware of that. And so when he begins to promote things like red flag legislation, you have to keep in mind what that means. And who's going to be determining who goes on the list.
Right.
And how do you get your name off the list?
I have a question for you. CD1, First Congressional District. What areas of New Hampshire is that?
That runs essentially from the seacoast over to Manchester, Derry, Londonderry, up to Tamworth and
Merrimack
Conway.
is part of it.
Merrimack
and
as
then
well.
Steve Negron, who's running in CD2,
Two.
he's got to go all the way up to the top of the state.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
land-wise, there's a much more the land,
yeah,
but the state's split in half in terms of population. I think
I
there's
know
like
you've both been working
670,000,
very,
yeah.
very hard.
You ain't kidding, they have. And this is, what people don't realize, this is the first time in years we actually have 2 military veterans running for
Yeah.
Congress. First
Right.
time in years. We have, I
Right.
don't, that I can remember, or anyone else that I
Yeah,
talked to.
and you think about this. New Hampshire is a veteran state. 10% of our population is made up of veterans. We have one of the highest percentage of veteran populations in the country.
So as you've been going around and meeting the voters, and I know you were in Merrimack this weekend, that was a good event. Thank
Oh,
you
yeah,
for
it was great.
coming to that.
It was great.
What are the people asking you?
Well, people are still concerned about the health care issue.
Okay.
And as I've said, folks in Congress, we're subsidizing health care for folks in Congress. 535 members of Congress, and we subsidize their health care to the tune of 70%. There are over 25,000 residents right here in the state of New Hampshire who experienced a 52% increase in their health care premiums.
Yeah.
Right.
We're one of them.
Right. And so you think of that, and you think that you're hearing people who sit on Mount High and look down and say, well, we'll get to you when we get to you. I think one of the things to do, the way we address this healthcare issue, is to look at Congress and say, we're going to remove your benefits. Then there'll create some level of urgency because they're families and they will be on the same healthcare system as we are. You can't say you're on the Affordable Care Act if we're subsidizing your healthcare.
Right.
And there's nothing affordable about it. Keep in mind, there are families in this state who are paying between $25,000 and $30,000 a year between their premium and their deductible.
Right.
And then when they met their premium, the deductible, they only cover 70 to 80% of the cost. There's nothing affordable about that. I met two gentlemen who were taking cancer medication, for instance, on the campaign trail. $10,000 a month for medication. $120,000 a year they're paying. We're the only country that I can think of that does not negotiate prescription drug prices. Then we prohibit our citizens from buying drugs outside the country
Right.
when the cost is far, far cheaper. And you've heard Democrats say, oh yeah, this is something we should look into now.
But they've done nothing.
You had 8 years
Right.
under President Obama to fix this. 8 years to push forward to allowing people to purchase drugs outside the country. You did nothing, nothing about it. In fact, you prohibited, actually tried to block some of those things from taking place.
Right. Do you know, Eddie, here in New Hampshire, before the Obamacare came in, we had pre-existing conditions covered. We had low-income children covered, low-income families covered under Medicaid. Now, under Medicare, this is where I think Pappas has no clue. Medicare is a program that's paid by seniors.
Right.
Okay, and that's getting their money back in insurance. Now, he was Donald Trump to President Trump, and I've heard him many times come out of his mouth that he will not touch Medicare or Social Security.
Right.
He just said it again recently.
Right.
Do you agree with
Absolutely.
President Trump on
I
this here, that that's their money? And
I absolutely agree that those who have paid in the Social Security, listen, we made promises, commitments. Promises made has to be promises kept. Seniors should not worry about their Social Security and Medicare in their retirement age. Nor should people who are approaching retirement age. People who are paid in those programs. Those aren't free programs. People actually paid into those programs. Seniors are paid nearly 3% of their salaries into Medicare while they've been working. So the fact is that Bernie Sanders or someone like Chris Pappas wants to come and dump people onto Medicare and jeopardize those seniors, those programs. We have to stabilize those programs like Social Security and Medicare and make sure they're there for seniors and future generations of folks who are paying into it. We know that President Obama, when he was there, when he forced the ACA through, they took $700 billion over that time frame, over 10 years, from Medicare. So further jeopardizing that program, just like the politicians have done, career politicians have done with Social Security, robbing money from people who have actually paid into it, jeopardizing these systems. And this is what happens when you have irresponsible government. We're one of the few governments that I can think of that actually borrows money to give to other nations.
right.
Just think about how silly that
That's
is.
stupid. Needs
You
to
ain't
stop.
kidding.
The gravy train needs
Right,
to stop.
right.
You know, he has something. You had something on your card here on the issues there where it says create good, high-paying jobs. Can you explain that? Because government doesn't create jobs.
Absolutely not.
Right.
What
And
you're
I know I
saying?
heard you before. I wanted people to
Yeah,
know.
yeah. What you're seeing right now is the best way to create high-paying jobs the government can do. Government can do two things: let you keep the money in your pocket by tax cuts, and we have to make these tax cuts permanent. You heard Nancy Pelosi suggest that $1,000 on average across the country is peanuts.
Yeah,
$1,000 means
crumbs.
a lot to people who live in our state.
Yeah.
And on average, New Hampshire families, I think on average, were receiving $3,000 back. That's a lot of money in your pocket to turn over in your community, in our state.
That'll get you a new chimney. I know because we got one.
That's right. So
That's right.
that's a lot of money there. So the best thing the government can do to help and create jobs is to keep money back into people's pockets. Also, regulations. And so you've seen right now this economy. We were told by the last administration we could 2% growth is what we could expect. That's the new norm. Now we look at a 4% growth in our economy. Why? Because the tax cuts are working. Pulling back regulations, allowing people to invest, allowing people the free market to guide the way. And we got back to a place where we believe in enterprise. We're pro-enterprise again. And I think that's helping. If you look at the number of people who are starting their own businesses, a single employee, just the owner himself, it's over 2 million jobs like that now. And it
Nice.
ranging anywhere from salaries of $100,000 a year to $3 million a year. And so that the
nice.
talent, yeah, the talent and ingenuity of the American people is awakening again.
Wait, yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you just reminded me. I was getting a new phone. I'm talking to the guy at the store, the cell phone store, And he said he just opened a business. He's a barber. And I used this young guy. I said, "You see how nice it is to live in America? You can have that dream. You can have an idea." And then he finished the sentence and run with it. I said, "In a socialized government, you can't do that." So hopefully, I set the seeds that he knows: vote Republican, free enterprise, free market
Hey, listen,
system.
if
not
you love this
socialism.
economy, you love working, you love freedom, you love being in control of your family and your communities, you're going to vote for Republicans.
See, I'm confused what you just said now. The reason why, Chris Pappas said free college for everybody. And I look at his card, this sailor, the soon-to-be congressman, and he says, reduce college costs and fix the student loan crisis. Explain that. Huh?
Right. So
You're not
if
going to
you-
give free college?
No,
So
no.
there's
Listen,
nothing's free.
Both of my daughters went to college, and they both have student loan debt. And one of the things,
Ours too.
one of the things that we've done to our young people in this country is led them astray. We've convinced them that everyone had to go to college. We've convinced them that jobs would be available to them. So we sold them this dream, and then we allow government to actually sanction this process and put its finger on the scale and guarantee loans at high interest rates. So our young people are suffering high interest rates, and we can't help them out. I think we have to do something about the interest rates, helping young people
Right.
drive these interest rates down, because it's unfair. And they should be allowed to start families, starter homes, for instance. A lot of them are tying up their tuition payments back in starter homes, but they sign off on the loans. They have to be held, so they have to pay them back. So I agree with that. But we have to look at how we educate people in this country. If you look at some of the jobs that are emerging, we could go back to seniors and juniors in high school and start training them to meet the workforce demands. Not everyone has to be in a brick and mortar building to be educated. And this is what happens when many on the left, like Chris, who believes that somehow government should be controlling this entire process. Our debt, particularly in New Hampshire, if you look, there was a study came out a couple of years ago that we spent nearly $65 million on sabbaticals over a 10-year period.
A waste.
If you look at
Wow.
at some of the amenities that have been built at some of the campuses, all this feeds into the cost. All of it feeds into the cost.
Right.
And the fact of the matter is, Southern New Hampshire University, for instance, is the fastest online growing university. You can have children who are being homeschooled now.
Oh, yeah,
and
we
can
just
take
met
courses.
a girl, the last show,
Right.
a homeschooling girl who's going to
Right,
do online
9
college.
kids.
Right.
Yeah.
She homeschooled.
Online.
And
So-
she's an EMT, our
Look at that.
previous guest.
Look at that. So we can educate our population in a different way if parents have choices. As long as we can back government out of it, particularly the federal government. New Hampshire is a very responsible state. We have a very talented governor. We have great lawmakers in our state. And in fact, we have the largest state legislature in the country.
Right.
So we get it. We get citizens legislature. We get volunteer legislators. We get control of our government in this state. The fact that the federal government will step in and mandate to New Hampshire, I find that offensive. And I believe one of my principal responsibilities is to go to Washington, D.C. to make sure that the federal government does not interfere in New Hampshire's business. I will be one of 535 people. That doesn't mean I'm one of 535 people there to legislate and dictate to states. To make sure that these representatives that our founders intended, that you go there and you represent your district, your state, and making sure that the federal government does not infringe, interfere, and obstruct state rights.
You know, last night my wife and I had a discussion there about what her school loans are coming up. She's paying already still her school loans, but she's been taking out loans, Parent Plus loans for her 2 kids. One's going to graduate next year. She was telling me that $150,000 in education loans are going to come due next year.
That's true.
Oof.
And she don't know how she's going to do it. She's going to have to work for the next 10 years or so.
No, but we can fix this problem by addressing the student loan interest rates. The interest rates here was a part of the problem. Also, we have to figure out a structure where some of these kids can meet the repayments given their jobs. We need to give incentives to business owners, for instance.
Right.
A lot of companies now are offering to pay your student loan debt if you come work for them.
Right,
Now,
but-
the reason I say
but
that because
see, but you're talking Parent Plus loans that aren't actually the student.
Yeah, the Parent
Parents are
Plus-
taking them out
Yeah,
for
we've done that
for
too.
their kids.
Yeah.
But I believe in a Parent Plus loan, the student is still responsible, but the parent is responsible if the student doesn't pay. Right. So I think if you look at this is another thing that Congress does that most people don't know about. Right. In most congressional offices, there's a stipend set aside for the employees there who have student loan debt. And I think it's anywhere from $500 to $1,000 a month you can pay towards that employee's student loan.
Wow.
right? So that's an enormous benefit for that young person. Once again, Congress has decided to take care of themselves and not address this issue broadly for the general population. Those are the type of things I'm talking about. But most people have no idea the type of benefits and the type of structures that Congress has created for themselves and not everyone else. And not that we should all become more dependent on government, but we have to figure out a way to get government out of our lives so that cost is associated with government every single time. You can't think of one government program that's been implemented where greater freedom has followed, greater prosperity, and reduction in costs. Nothing. Anything the government gets involved in, cost automatically goes up.
Right.
Right.
So,
It just does.
do you believe in term limits?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I really believe that's the only way to restore power back to citizens, particularly at the federal level. Because, you know, people have said to me, well, you're taking away my right to choose, right, if you believe in term limits. And I tell people, imagine if we didn't have term limits on the president. It wasn't until
Right. We
president.
still have FDR.
Right.
No,
Yeah.
actually, he passed away.
Well. I mean,
You're
you don't know
right,
who
yeah.
you could be looking at, right? In the course of our country could have shifted dramatically if we didn't have term limits on presidents. And so now we've come to this place where we believe that we can't put term limits on federal elected officials. And the reason I think you should put term limits there so that we turn these seats over more often, and you encourage other people to run. I don't believe in building a political career. I think you run for a seat, you choose the seat you want to run for, you do the very best you can.
Right.
You make sure you
Shouldn't be career
help someone else get
politicians.
elected.
Right.
You make sure you help someone else get elected and go into that seat.
Right.
That's one of the things you learn in the military and law enforcement as well. You train someone to take your spot. As soon as you're promoted, you're training somebody to take over. Because if you go down, the mission has to succeed. And you're trained to give up power in the military. But in politics, you're not trained to give up power. You're not trained to give up those seats. And so to me, I think term limits is the best way to give power back.
I saw that, sorry to interrupt you, Rudy Giuliani came
Oh, yes.
to endorse you.
Yeah. We're happy to get Rudy Giuliani's endorsement.
You have mine too.
Yes,
Yeah.
we were happy to get endorsement. I've been very pleased with
I'm up there with Rudy.
with the span of endorsements we've
Yeah, we were
gotten.
there when Rudy
Yeah,
spoke.
and I've said that to people.
I
you know,
saw Representative Victoria Sullivan
Yeah.
and Victoria Lisa Freeman were both there.
Yeah, we've
Most
gotten-
people don't know he
I
was
know,
on
I've been
board with
so-
Trump in the
yeah.
beginning, and
Oh, yeah.
was right there.
Yeah,
and-
yeah. I was with Dr. Carson initially. When Dr. Carson dropped out,
Right.
I went to help the Trump campaign at that point, and now President Trump. And so to me, when we started looking at this process, I feel very, very blessed. I really do. The number of people who have come onto our campaign and been with us and endorsed our campaign, the broad spectrum of people. And I think you're doing something right when you have so many different types of people, different personalities that have endorsed the campaign. Because I think our country is desperate for men and women who can lead, who've been trained in leadership, quite honestly. And I draw a distinction between what happens at the state level and legislature as opposed to the federal government. Here in New Hampshire, you can reach out and touch. You're very accessible. Both of you are very accessible to your constituents. They see you. They know you. You're in the community. You're everywhere. They see you at the shopping mall. They see you at the
Only
grocery
when we're in
store.
sweats. It's always when you go in sweats, that's when you run into
Right.
everybody.
They see you.
I see pictures of her running all the time.
Right, but you don't see them in Washington D.C.
Hey, there was another area here that I know you had highlighted here, put a box around it, on strengthen national security and provide for our veterans. I already know the veteran community, you already understand that because I've seen you
Being a veteran,
testify and being a veteran, you understand that. But strengthen our national security, what does that mean to you?
That has to do with our economic stability. That has to do with our energy stability. That has to do with our foreign engagement. If you think about this, like when people challenge the Republicans and suggest that somehow that we're not supportive of the EPA or we're not supportive of our environment. Of course we are. We established the EPA. Of course we understand that natural resources are part of our national security. But energy is as well. So we need an all the above energy solution that helps provide economic stability for our country, jobs, but also our allies. Germany is buying natural gas from Russia. Well, where there's an issue. Germany should be buying natural gas from America, where it's cheaper for them. And so that's the type of stuff that we need to get back to. That's what I mean by national security. That's in our economic interest. Keep in mind, we have 800 military bases, installations, I should say, installations around the globe in 70 different countries.
That's right.
Some absolutely we need, but that's a tune of $150 billion a year. So when you know, who's paying our cost?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
again, I keep saying we're
That's
the
what
most
the
generous
president
nation.
keeps saying.
We're the most generous nation on the planet.
Bring some of the troops home and put them on the border where they belong.
Right.
You're like a clone of the president.
I know. Like,
Listen, I feel like I'm sitting on the couch with the president again.
I
You
had
know,
a
who's
question
paying
for
the
you.
bill? That's right.
Because
Yeah.
New Hampshire is a canine state. It really is. Everyone loves their dogs, and I just noticed in your picture you and your wife have two. It looks like
Yes.
a poodle and
Bulldog.
a bulldog. What are
English
their names?
bulldogs.
Tell us about your
The-
doggies.
my English bulldog is Maximus.
Maximus. I love that name.
And my standard poodle is Zoe. Now I have to tell you,
That's
poodles.
a Marine Bulldog, by the way. Okay. That's so Marines will support him, but go ahead.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, you know the Marines are part of the Navy.
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Men's
Yeah. I know.
department, but go
Every show here.
Yeah, but I have to say it because he keeps going. I have to
I know, yeah.
do it.
It's
So-
a Marine thing. We mentally torture everybody.
That's right.
I love
that's
Eddie.
right, that's right. But Marines are just sailors in development.
Yeah.
But
There's
we
a
have-
lot of sailors in Londonderry, by the way. I
That's
just want
right.
to let you know that.
Yeah, they're out there. Get out and vote.
Yep. Tell your friends and family.
November 6th. It's coming up.
The standard poodle. I encourage people if you've never experienced standard poodle, they're great guard dogs. Naturally,
Really? Wow.
naturally trained.
They're big. They're bigger.
About
dogs?
Zoe's about 70 pounds.
Eddie, you know I've been a state rep for 12 years. You've been, what, 8 years?
8 years.
I've seen you testify in many committees, coming in there and speaking out on issues while you were with the Liquor Commission, then even as the chief of police. Chris Pappas has been our executive counselor. I've never, ever once seen him walk in any committee and testify for the good of New Hampshire.
Right.
And this is why I'm so shocked he's even stepping up to be a state congressman.
Yeah, well, you know, as I said before, Chris has been involved in politics since he was 22. He came home from college and went right into politics, running at 22. Now he's had that luxury, he's had that privilege. Most of us have not. Most of
Right.
us have raised families,
to
worked
work.
hard,
Right,
worked
work
a
for a
couple
living.
You have
jobs.
2 kids?
Right, right. And we've had to take on other responsibilities in life. We haven't had the luxury of just running for office. And so after being on the ballot for 18 times and being kind of groomed, you know, I think.
Eddie, we got about 50 seconds, and there's no doubt in my mind you're going to be the next congressman. How do people? What should people do right now? Tell them
What we
down
need the
the
people
wire.
to do, make sure you're registered to vote. Make sure you're planning on finding those 2 or 3 people who have not registered, those 2 or 3 people who haven't voted in a while, getting them to the voting booths. We need you there. Go to our website, please, Edwards4NH, Edwards, F-O-R-N-H, to figure out how you can volunteer, how you can sign up, how we can get you there, holding signs on election day. This is one of the most important elections. I know you hear this every election
Yep,
cycle, but this is
we
one of the
do.
most important elections in our country. It's very, very important.
As President Trump always said, what do you have to lose by hiring a veteran, a Liberty guy, a conservative, a man with integrity? This is Who's Looking Out for You, and we'll be back again for
With
another
Kim.
show in a couple of weeks.
Bye.